Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Martin Luther King, Jr. Bending, Not Breaking. A mini-episode. The Lost Adventures, Book 2. Sleep Bending. Welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking, specifically a mini-episode. This is Ben Pruitt, and I am really excited to be able to return to the Lost Adventures comics. They are so chock full of poignant moments worth our attention, and we get to dive in together, so thank you for joining me. Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-full podcast, so we intend to discuss the details of each comic as we discuss them. And today, we are talking about the comic Sleep Bending, whose story is written by Joshua Hamilton. It's in Book 2 of The Lost Adventures. So here's just a quick recap. Essentially, during the middle of Book 2 Earth, the gang is sleeping, and Aang starts dreaming about a fishopotamus flying through the air, and naturally he wants to play with this cool animal. And unfortunately, the rest of the crew is vigorously woken up by Aang's sleep bending. He has begun to bend the elements without realizing what he's doing, and everyone attempts to wake Aang up, but they all end up hitting each other with their attempts instead of Aang, until he performs an immense bending feat by cracking a mountain in half, causing a landslide, of which the rest of the crew has to run from, but Aang ultimately just lies there sleeping and is hit by a tiny pebble in the forehead, which wakes him up. And he wakes up excited to tell his friends about his awesome dream. And that's the end. So, there's a lot that we could discuss here, I think, but the first thing that comes to my mind as I read this story was the quote from Spider-Man, "With great power comes great responsibility," and you know, I gotta admit, it seems really scary to be able to do so much damage without my awareness of it. And, then again, it seems fairly plausible that I could be causing a lot of long-term impacts through actions that I may be taking for granted, just as Aang does when he sleeps. And, it reminds me of a previous comic in which Aang airbends uncontrollably, and then he is sick, and he's sneezing, so every time he sneezes, he's just airbending everything and blowing it all away, and I assume he had to learn to control his bending during his sicknesses. And I know that it would be a priority for me, that I would want to learn how to ensure the safety of those around me when I got sick. And I similarly wonder if there's wisdom among the four nations for how to address benders who sleep bend. I wonder if Aang is the first one out of, this long history. Somehow I doubt it, but what wisdom is available to benders who may have ancestors who have addressed similar issues? I mean, to be fair, it's entirely possible that you may not have access to that ancestral wisdom. What if you're the first person to realize that you do things outside of your awareness? What would be the process for solving the problem without that ancestral wisdom? It's also, Aang doesn't have access to it because he's on the move. He's traveling all the time, and they're often running from the authorities, especially when it comes to, Fire Nation authorities. But anyway, what's the process for solving this kind of a problem without access to that ancestral wisdom? And I don't know that I have a great answer, but to me it kind of illustrates the importance of community. Had Aang woken up without his friends to help him see the damage he had caused, I wonder if he even would have suspected that he indeed caused it himself. Wouldn't many of us look around and wonder what had happened and be curious and wonder who may have caused it? Some of us might wonder if we had indeed done it, but I bet that there are many of us who would never even consider that it would have been me or that would have been us who caused the problem. And I think that's the the joy of having community around you, having people that you trust. It allows space for feedback and helping you understand where, even in your unawareness, you can still learn and grow and become better. So I think that leads me to a question. When we learn that we have actions that we are responsible for, but we also know that we're not entirely responsible for them, where does that accountability lie? So the law suggests that, ignorance of the law does not excuse one from being held accountable to it. Like, that's as old as Roman times. It's been around for centuries, millennia. And in this respect, does Aang's actions, despite his lack of knowledge, mean that he is at fault? And furthermore, when we act in such a way that the impact is outside the realm of our awareness, are we at fault? And I think the problematic answer to that is yes, to both of those questions. Like, in a way, this is why conversations about race and privilege are so difficult, because oftentimes our participation in oppressive, racist systems is outside of our awareness, which is why we must endeavor to continue to learn and grow our understanding of such things. And that's why history is so important in learning the beginnings of things. What was the funding for X, Y, and Z building? Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent I'm running away from sleep bending, but it's just something to consider. I think that we have a lot of responsibility to learn our histories and learn what's going on so that we know how we can act based off of our advantage and or privilege. So that's sleep bending for you. This is kind of turned into a big topic for a mini episode. I guess we'll have to revisit this kind of idea in the future, but for now, I know that I am walking away from this comic with more questions than answers. And I think that's okay, because I know that I'm going to learn and grow by pondering them. So that's a lot, but thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening to this Avatar tidbit, this mini episode. Just remember that, we also have live episodes every month, so check out our Patreon perks to see how to gain access to that. Follow us at Bending Not Breaking on Facebook. You can also find us. We have an open Facebook group where you can join us and talk about the episodes. You can also find us at BNB_pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. And if you feel so inclined, go and rate and review us on iTunes, because that helps us out greatly. And without further ado, this has been Pruitt, and this has been a mini episode of Bending Not Breaking. Until next time, be well.